Shalom, everybody. It's been a couple weeks since my last Kingdom verse, and it feels good to be back. I actually spent this last week on vacation, my first ever vacation in years. I can't remember the last time I actually stepped away from the office, literally like left my work at home, felt great. And I'll tell you guys, I'll be taking you guys through a little bit of what I looked at this week, if there's time. And we decided to go up to Washington, D.C. to the Smithsonian because, the indoctrination is free there. It's all free. And the way we worked this out is that while we were gone, we rented our house out. So that was great. We got the money for that. Not only that, the house that we stayed up at in D.C. was in Virginia, just outside of Washington, across the Potomac. That was also free because of our home exchanges that we do. So we did a home exchange. And the whole trip was free. Not only that, we rented our house, so all of our food and gas was paid for. It was a great trip. And I love the Smithsonian. I love, some people they get so upset of like, oh, they're lying to us right now. I love looking at all of it, all of official history, everything. Bring it on. Everything that they want to shove down my throat, I will look at and decide for myself. Now, the way this is going to work tonight is, for those of you in Discord right now, you can raise your hand and I will bring you up and you could talk. And whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to share with the audience tonight. Hopefully I'm coming in nice and crisp and loud to everyone on YouTube right now. For those of you in YouTube, if you want to ask a question, I will try to get to them and see if I can answer them. This can be a Q&A, though. The way I am hoping this Kingdom verse goes is that we make it a tradition, and those of you in the Discord community, which is an amazing research community, the TUC Discord, if you're not a member, please come and join us, is that you guys can come and talk about any subject that you talk about in our TUC Discord. So, and it looks like I do have my first speaker I want to bring up. Polly, come on up and say hello to everybody. You are on. So unfortunately, you are on the stage, but unfortunately I can't hear you. So could be a microphone issue on your part. I'm not really sure what's going on. Okay, well, while we work on that, let me just talk about a few things. Polly, maybe keep looking at it on your end. David, come on up, say hi, and welcome. David, I see that your microphone is turned off.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. David, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. The question I have is, I've been rereading through a number of passages like Luke and also Enoch, referring to this generation. Now, for those who may hold a position that this is referring to the tribulation period, but then there will be those of us who hold a position that we believe that the tribulation period has already occurred and we're in the little season. So I wonder if you had any thoughts regarding what Enoch has said, that it was more specific to the little season, because I'm wondering during the time that we believe the tribulation occurred, what would have been the thought process? I mean, there were some who had the ability or had the text to read, such that we know Peter and Jude did, but it wasn't as wide. So I was wondering what your thoughts might be as to Enoch's writings is really more for the little season as opposed to a quote unquote tribulation period.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's a good question. I would have to, of course, look at I guess, specific passages within Enoch. What was the book you said right before Enoch? I think there was another one.
I was talking about Baruch.
Okay, Baruch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't necessarily have an answer for that. I mean, my perspective is generally that Enoch was written, the generation it was written for, in my opinion, was the first century generation. And when we talk about, this later generation and how these books can be hidden and that kind of stuff. And I think there was a lot of fulfillment that happened at that time. But, the great thing about, now within any of these prophetic books, you're going to have passages that tie into one generation or another, and there are things that apply to us. I will point out that the great thing about Scripture, and you know this, David, is that it's timeless and it never changes. Yah is eternal and he's unchanging from beginning to end. He doesn't change his mind. The instructions in righteous living remain, and so we can look at things that apply to one generation, and it ultimately applies to us too. And I will point this out prophetically as well, that when we're looking at, the minor prophets or even the major prophets, whatever, and they're talking about how the moon will go blood red, and there's going to be the locusts and smoke and all those kind of things, stars will fall from the sky. I find it really, I guess, frustrating sometimes when, for example, we'll look at some events in the 1800s, like was it the 1830s or 40s, when all these stars fell from the sky, which was an amazing event. And it's something that I haven't necessarily covered. But what I see is all these people are saying, see, that was a fulfillment of, this passage here, that. I'm like, actually, no, I don't think it was. I think that these are repeated events. They're cyclical and they keep happening. And so when these prophets are talking about these things, we can expect similar judgments to happen, cyclically throughout the generations. But yeah, that's as much as I can answer that question. I'm sorry if I couldn't answer that better, David. Again, I would have to look at specific passages, say, okay, which of this was for Enoch's lifetime, the judgment of the watchers, which of these were for the later generation, which may be Messiah's generation. And then, of course, which would be for us. And of course, when you look at the 10-week calendar of Enoch, it clearly goes to the end of time. And we're not at the end of time yet. By the end of time, what I mean is that the scriptural language, as far as I'm concerned, when it talks about the end days, it's talking about Messiah's generation, and of course the going up to through the sixth day of creation, the number of man, which would be, of course, Messiah arrived around 5,500, so we're going up to the year 6,000. To me, that's the end days. The little season, we could call it the end days, I guess. I mean, in context to the creation account, but I see it almost as something completely different. That's just me, of course. I think we're on a completely new week, a new creation week, so to speak. Okay, so question here on YouTube. And again, everyone, feel free to come up to stage. Sorry that it didn't work out for you, Polly. I'd love to bring you up. The question, do you think the abyss was already opened and Apollyon already came out with the scorpions? Now, the scorpions, are you talking about the passage in Revelation with the stingers with the crowns on them? Not really sure what passage of scripture you're looking at. I want to be real specific with these, and I could always bring these up on the screen if you would like. I did a study on these locust-like scorpion stingers some time ago, and I didn't make it into a video. So it's one of those, like, it's in another video. It's not the topic, so it kind of got buried, but it's in my book, The Glorious Appearing. And I talk about another first, I reference another first century text called The Apocalypse of, is it Zechariah or Zephaniah? It's the Apocalypse of Z, or one thing or another. And in this apocalypse, he has a vision where he goes to heaven, and these same exact scorpion stingers, they see him and they start to approach him to take him to Tartarus or to the abyss or whatever. And he has a guardian angel there, and he's like, no, you can't have them, that kind of stuff. What's interesting is that these stinging creatures do appear to be, I have a lot of questions about who they are. Were they created by Yah, or are they children of Lilith? I'm more prone to think that they are the children of Lilith that are at war against the sons of Adam, and that they have been given a dominion in the abyss, in the spiritual realm. And so my understanding of the passage in Revelation, which, what is it, chapter 6 through 9 in there, where the locusts appear, my understanding on that is that it was a specific time during the war of the Jews leading up to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, when the context is Jerusalem, and that these torturing stingers, which are handed over to people in the afterlife after they die, and they are handed over to people to be tormented, that they were able to come in for a time and, you know, torture the people in Jerusalem without killing them. It was like a supernatural event. Whether or not they saw them, I don't know, but, you know, it was a horrific time. And, you know, again, I have a lot of questions too about this idea of torture in the afterlife, because I've all looked at the same things as most of you have, with soul sleep. She always used to be a diehard soul sleeper. You go down to, you know, you go down to sleep when you die. But then, of course, there's, you know, a lot of other passages. Again, Revelation lines up with some of these that there's some torturing going on. So, you know, just take that for what it is and come to your own conclusion. All right. So all right. Feel free, anyone in the audience, raise your hand, step up here, step up to the microphone and talk. So what I wanted to do tonight is, well, let me actually throw this out there early on. Support the Unexpected Cosmology's mission. I want to thank everybody who is keeping us afloat. I mean, I really am so grateful to everyone who is being a part of Yah's blessing. And this isn't just me, right? I'm supporting Rebecca, who does our editing and puts out some amazing work in her books. I'm trying to support Pamela. We're not there yet, though. As I point out, that every single month when we meet our goal, anything that goes over that goal, we're not just pocketing it here. It goes to Pamela. So a couple months ago, we were able to raise for her about $2,200. The next month, it dropped about $1,200. Last month, it went down to about $280 that we were able to give her. Now, it dropped $1,000 each month. I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on anybody, just kind of letting you know where we're at. And she's the one that's translating scripture. I mean, she is doing something much larger, I think, than anything else that we're doing here. It is a massive, a wonderful calling from Yah, what she's doing. So just thank you, everybody who has been a part of the blessing. You can see where we're at right now. There's the number right there and what we have to meet this month. Only 9 donations got us there. Amazing. It's just a few handful of people that are contributing to this. And unfortunately, under all my videos, YouTube is making it very difficult now. The links aren't working, but on my main channel, there are the main links on there. It is working on there, so you can go visit that. This is Pamela's latest book, Song of Songs, which she came out with last month. Actually, it's not her latest. Her latest is actually Psalms Volume 3 from the Paleo-Hebrew. And I don't even know what she's working on next, honestly. She's working on something. It might be Matthew, might be Revelation in the Paleo-Hebrew. But this is Song of Songs from the Paleo-Hebrew. Get yourself a copy. We are only selling these on paperback as per Pamela's request, because she wrote it like a not a playbill, but like a script, basically, like a theatrical script. That's how it was written. Get yourself a copy. We're going to be doing a study on it in about a month or two, so you have plenty of time to get it out. For those of you who are interested in going to our TUC retreat in 2025, March 26th through the 30th, it will be Passover. If you're celebrating a separate Passover, that's totally cool. Come on anyways. We're going to have a Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread. The first day, we're going to have all 4 or 5 days are covered in food, and of course, housing as well. And if you have questions about how to find the right bed, because we're selling them according to the bed. Sometimes there's individual rooms, sometimes they're in group rooms, things like that. Contact me, let me know. I'd love to help you out. So why do I have a picture of pizza up here? Oh, you're working on Psalms Volume 4, Pamela. That's awesome to hear. All right, good stuff. Why do I have a picture of pepperoni pizza up here? I thought I didn't eat pepperoni, right? What am I doing here? Am I enticing you to do something naughty? No, that's not what I'm doing. This is actually one of the most amazing things I've ever had. We, while we were up in DC, we went to a restaurant in Virginia that doesn't serve pepperoni with any kind of pork product in it. It is only beef based. And I was like, what? I heard about this. And I am asking him, like, you're telling me that you make just 100% beef pepperoni? They're like, yes, we don't put any pork, pig product on our pizza, 100% beef. Telling you this was a delight, one of those amazing things. And I don't even miss pork products. I haven't had them in half a decade, at least 6 years. I don't know how long it's been now. It's been a long time. I find it disgusting. This was so good. And I wish that nationwide this would catch on. People would go, I want beef pepperoni on my pizza, 100% beef. That should sell. I wish this would catch on. There's that. Why do I have a picture of C-3PO and R2-D2? Well, I was going through the Smithsonian. Now, I'm showing you pictures from my trip, and I wish I took 1,000 more pictures. I really do. There was something everywhere I could talk about. And because I'm in StreamYard, the streaming service I'm using, they don't like JPEG images. They don't like pictures. They don't let you show them. I don't know why. So I just threw it all into a PDF file, and I don't have a problem with that. Cecil, the dates for the TUC retreat. Let me look at this before I get distracted here. Are March 26th through the 30th. That should be a Wednesday through a Sunday. And yeah. All right. Well, this is the actual, you're looking at the actual C-3PO and the R2-D2 that they use in Return of the Jedi. For all you kids out there, that's episode 6. When, we just knew it as Return of the Jedi back then. And I look at this and I go, his legs are gold. That's not a silver leg. Now, the lighting here, this is the thing that gets you with the gaslighting. And they're like, oh, well, you kids never realized this in the 80s, the late 70s and the 80s, when you watch the original trilogy or all through the 90s on VHS, because it looked gold because it would reflect off the sand or whatever. So I'm reading the plaque, and it says right here on the plaque that this is the actual one that was used in Return of the Jedi that Anthony Daniels wore, who's quite a thin dude to fit into that thing. Very claustrophobic, that suit. And I'm crawling all around it. I'm looking at all the different lines. I'm like, this is gold all the way through. Like, what's going on? Now, a lot of you are going to look at this and you go, yeah, but Noel, that one over here, his left one actually on stage, right, that looks silver. Well, it actually didn't in person, but that's not the one that's silver in the movie. The one that's silver in the movie is his right leg, which would be, of course, stage left up here. So I'm wondering what in the world's going on with this. It clearly didn't ping pong back. I think our reality is still presently that he has a silver leg. And I don't know why his suit in the Smithsonian is, as we all remember it, 2 gold legs, no silver leg. It's not even remotely silver. It's the same exact color, both of them. They're gold. The goldenrod. I don't know what's going on. Here was another fun little piece. These are Marie Antoinette's. Looks like I have some people who want to come up and talk. No requests. All right. These are Marie Antoinette's earrings. Now, I found this really fascinating because Marie Antoinette, lived in the Palace of Versailles, amongst the other places she lived in. And if you recall, the Palace of Versailles had no plumbing. In fact, they had a lot of poop problems. This is the official narrative. I will remind you, this is one of the things I find fascinating about the Smithsonian, just going off of the official narrative. And Marie Antoinette, apparently the poop was coming out of her kitchen. It was coming out of the walls in her kitchen and all through the pipes, and people were pooping in the corners. Like, you would walk down the hallways. This is what they tell you officially. People were pooping behind the staircases and in the hallways. It was just flowing everywhere because they had no toilets, no plumbing. They didn't think of putting anything, no long drop or anything in these palaces, no pipes for it. And Marie Antoinette would be walking along the walls of Versailles, and the poop would be coming down off the top of Versailles, landing on her. Never mind the fact that she's walking through the poop trail. Like, this is apparently what life was like just 300 years ago, right? 200 or 300 years ago, it was like this. And then you go and you just look at their jewelry, right? I mean, these, you can't see in this picture, these are massively big, studded diamond jewels that she would wear amongst, all the poop, because I guess, a girl's got to have sparkly ears, even though I don't mean to be disgusting, guys. I'm just telling you, like, these are the kind of things that don't add up. Polly, it looks like you're back. I think your microphone's working. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt your trail, whatever you want to call that. Listen, I just had a really weird Bible study the other day, and I messaged a couple of people about it, but I wanted to know your thoughts on it. And if anybody knows the book Biblical Cosmology that I wrote, it's Genesis chapter 1. I'm going through Genesis chapter 1 again, and this goes back something you said to me a long time ago. We were talking about Bigfoot, and when I was talking to you about my book, that's the same title as that other book that I don't like, the book of Lamech of Cain, and then I think the other one's called Cain Leviathan. And we were talking about Bigfoot, and I was mentioning that I was putting Bigfoot into my story. And that you were like, yeah, I think Bigfoot are just like beasts of the earth. Like, the earth has its own like beasts, and they're spiritual beasts out there. I'm looking at Genesis chapter 1 again, and I'm finding that it's not just what I thought, but it's more. So day 3, the waters, and here comes the earth. So Genesis 1:11. And I don't have Paleo Hebrew in front of me, so maybe that would help me. But all I have is so I'm reading from the Berean Study Bible. Then God Yahuwah said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation," and it was so. So I see day 4, which is 14. Sorry, verse 14. And Yahuwah said, "Let there be." Okay, day 5. Sorry, verse 20. And Yahuwah said, "Let the waters teem, let birds fly," and they came out. But the most interesting thing to me is the 6th day in verse 24, where Yahuwah said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind." So rereading this, I'm being overtaken by a completely new theological idea or train of, I don't know. It might be a new thing to me. I'm still kind of overtaken by that, because he had rulers and subthrones and thrones and dominion and archons and just priests and not priests, but princes and chiefs underneath him as sub-rulers. We find the watchers, or find the archons and 70 elders. They were the ones that were given permission to rule the nations at the Tower of Babel. There's all these demiurges or demigods, as it were, lowercase Elohim, that are sub-categorized underneath him as governors or mayors. Is the earth, did Yahuwah give permission or dominion or power to the actual Eretz, the earth, to say, okay, you're in charge of bringing forth living creatures? And as I read it in Hebrew, and I don't have the Paleo Hebrew, but as I read that verse in Hebrew, the first sentence, and Yahuwah said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds." And it was so. So God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, just like God made, quote unquote, God made man. But he said, "Let us create man in our image," talking to everybody who's around him. I'm like, well, did he do that with the earth too? Did he just say to the earth, "Okay, make the creatures, and I'll have my imager, Hadam, name the creatures that you made"? And it's like he's just sitting back and watching it happen? Or did he speak forth every type of grasshopper and Katie did or whatever else? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, it's I'm still like, I don't really know how to explain it. That's my best attempt, and I'm gonna go ahead and step down from the stage and leave it to you.
Yeah, Polly, thank you for that. That was wild, and it's very timely. It's a very timely question. It's good for any time of the year, and of course, we're about 3 or 4 weeks away from rolling the Torah back and starting in Genesis again. Where I'm probably going to spend like 2 or 3 weeks just on. I'll probably be breaking up the first chapter, Genesis 1 over 2 weeks, and Genesis 2 over two. I mean, it's just going to take a long time to get through because there's so much stuff. So I don't even know where to begin. Let's just start back with what you started with the Sasquatch. Now, Polly and I share a lot of mutual loves. One of them is for the Studio Ghibli films. A lot of people don't know about the Studio Ghibli films, and they're pretty popular now in America. I went to the first time Spirited Away premiered in America. Disney put it out back in 2002. It was, I believe. I lived in Long Beach, California. I drove with a friend who was a big Japanese, like all things Japanese nerd, all the way up to San Francisco to see the premiere there. They were only premiering it in that theater. And now, of course, when they come out with the Studio Ghibli film in America, when dubbed in English, it's like a huge nationwide event. Back then, it was just like we had to drive 400 miles to the nearest theater to see it. But I bring up Studio Ghibli because they're really big on this idea of these spiritual caretakers all over the earth. They're just spirits everywhere, and they just tend to gardens and that kind of stuff. Now, the problem with the Asian cultures like Japan, you go there and they worship the spirits. And this is what you'll see, the shrines everywhere that they worship the spirits. And so when you have this discussion, most people's mind go there. Well, if you recognize that these spirits exist, then you're now going into spirit worship. No, I'm not worshiping the spirits. I just recognize they exist. And when you get into Enoch, that came up already earlier tonight, and other books like Baruch and so on and so forth, they talk a lot about how the lightning and the thunder and the rain and the snow and just all the different weather patterns. We can get into tornadoes, hurricanes, all these things. They are all driven by spiritual beings. So let's comment on this really quickly, because again, most people, when they think about spirits, they think they're trained within the Sunday school paradigm to think in Jesus or Satan terms. You have angels, fallen angels, and these fallen angels, any kind of spirit out there, it has to be a fallen angel, whether it's a demon, whatever, it's all a fallen angel. And then there's the good angels. They live up in heaven and they just kind of come down to minister to us or whatever, but that's their mission. And it's like, no, actually, the earth is functioning right now. We can go out there, we can see the earth functioning because you have a lot of spirits, call them fairies if you want. I think of fairies as the animals of the spiritual world, right? So if we are think of like what a dog is to you, that a fairy would be like that to an angel, right? Angels maybe are doppelgangers in the spiritual realm, and then you've got the fairies below them, and they're all doing their job. Now there's good spirits and there's bad spirits, and I think if they're a good spirit and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're functioning as they ought, as they were created to do, they're not going to end up on the naughty list. And if they're not on the naughty list, they're not going to be mentioned. It's the naughty spirits are the ones that are seeking their own attention. They are, they have malpractice, these kind of things. They're giving the spiritual world a bad name. And so this is why I believe that we don't encounter the good spirits, because they are just doing their thing. We leave them alone. It's the bad spirits that are invading us. They're trying to possess us. They're trying to corrupt us, this kind of stuff. They are to be avoided at all costs. Telling everyone out there, do not invite spirits into your house. That is very important. But hopefully that makes sense. So there's that right there. There's the spiritual realm. That's a fascinating study. I love talking about this. It really does fascinate me. In the post-Newtonian, Copernican worldview, the Darwinian worldview, whatever you want to call it, like this idea of spirits, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all these things are not only driven by spirits, but they are divine beings. It's just beyond. You try to mention that to everyone, they're just like, yeah, I read fairy tales too. I'm so into this with all these texts. I don't see it any other way. I think we are surrounded. We are in a spiritual realm everywhere. Of course, again, I want to reiterate, okay, do not worship them. Do not pray to them. Do not invite them into your home. Just let them do their thing. If you meet a Sasquatch in the woods, just let it do its thing. Just let it kind of, yeah, maybe it's ornery. Maybe it doesn't want you there. Maybe it's going to slap you silly if you come up to it, right? Maybe you should be slapped silly. Just let them do their thing. They won't bother you. Don't bother them. Now, going on to the creation aspect with the, yeah, so there's basically obedient and disobedient spirits. Actually, I think there's 3 categories. And there are the wicked, there are the sinners, and then there are the righteous. Let me looks like someone else. Just hold on a second. I want to talk about Polly's very in-depth point here before I bring the next person up. Give me a second. And so this is, of course, how Sheol is classified according to Enoch. You have 3 divisions. One is for the wicked, and the wicked will be risen from the dead to be judged at some point in history, whether it's happened or hasn't happened yet. Or maybe it happens in different segments. I don't really know. The next is just the sinners. They lived a life. They weren't wicked. They weren't righteous. They didn't live a righteous life. They just paid their taxes. You know, they didn't murder. They didn't commit adultery, whatever. They just lived their life. They died. And apparently they just go to Sheol, and that's where they'll be. That's it. And finally, death itself is thrown in the lake of fire, and it's no more. But then you have the righteous, right? These are the ones who obeyed Yah and kept his commands. Now, according to, it seems like a lot of ancient Hebrew thinking, even modern rabbinical Jewish thinking, is that the righteous angels still had a free will to be disobedient. And you actually have examples of good angels being disobedient. So and they would mess up, and they could, of course, repent, and so on and so forth. So I would assume the same thing with nature. We could have scenarios where creatures in nature, it's kind of like you have an animal, a pet. It's a good pet, and then one day it just snaps. It does something you have to discipline, right? You have to give it the dog a spanking or whatever. It's the same thing. And you have these spirits that, they're going about. Maybe they're sinners. Maybe they're not righteous. Maybe they're not wicked. They're just doing their job. They kind of mess up, give them a spanking, so on and so forth. I want to talk about the Anunnaki real quick. And I don't know if Paulie said the word. I think he did say Anunnaki. And yes, I am of the opinion that they were co-creators. And it's the same thing when we read in 3rd Baruch. Yes, 3rd Baruch, where the do I have the right text? Where it talks about, I quote from it all the time, where you have the Garden of Paradise, and we see that Yahweh, he actually plants this garden. This is a special project after the creation project, and yet here he actually has hundreds of angels actually do it for him. And they're actually all planting their own trees. We see Michael plants the olive tree. That same olive tree is the descendants of that olive tree in paradise, is what we see all around Israel to this day. We see Satanael, he plants the vineyard, so on and so forth. So I think that they all had a part in that, and of course, creating in our image, right? And so, yeah. But I love that point you mentioned, Paulie, about, without being too repetitive here, about the earth. If I'm understanding what Paulie is saying correctly, he said that the earth was given the command to bring forth, the earth was commanded to bring forth these different animals according to their kind, which may explain the different variations. I know how microevolution works, right? I know how dog breeding works. I know how breeding of animals works. The typical young earth creationist view is that all dogs came from one species, all birds, so on and so forth. And, it only takes so many hundreds of years to create the variation. It is an interesting thought, though, if you have all these different continents, right? And if we take Pangea out of the equation and just say, okay, we have all these different continents, and we have these different variations of birds and monkeys, the things that, Darwin started observing, doesn't mean that they evolved. It doesn't mean that they all came from the same, it doesn't mean that they all evolved, as Darwin said, or contrarily, it doesn't mean that they all had the same father as the Earth creationist said. It could be that they all came forward according to a certain design, according to the earth. So that's just, let's move on. That was a great commentary, Paulie. Welcome up on stage. Come up here, say hello. You're on.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. No, I just I was listening in, and I was listening to what you and Paulie were talking about, and I was wondering, had you ever heard of I guess they're called fairy tears, the Cherokee fairy tears?
I have not. What do you know about them?
There's this story that, and it's kind of in the same vein that you and Polly were talking about. You know, it's like trying to fit other people's experiences within, you know, the Bible, and you know, figuring out like how legitimate they are, and if they are legitimate, then how does a tree spirit, you know, fit in? But there's this Cherokee story. It's called the Fairy Tears of the Cherokee, and they have them today. Actually, they look like little crosses. They're like stalagmite cross. They almost look like they were carved out of rocks. But anyways, I guess the story goes is that the Cherokee people were celebrating a feast of the Great Spirit with the forest spirits, and they noticed an unfamiliar spirit approach the forest spirits, and then they witnessed the forest spirits were crying, and when they inquired of the forest spirits what the spirit had relayed onto them and why they were crying on a festival of the Great Spirit, they replied to the Cherokee people that the son of the Great Spirit had died, and that this is a story that the Cherokee people, you know, tell each other to this day. There's this weird, I don't know, connection between what happened way back when, and this is the kind of, it sounds kind of weird because this is the kind of stuff that like even Joseph Smith was kind of getting into, you know, when he was talking about the Native Americans possibly being a lost tribe of Israel. So, you know, I just wanted to share that with y'all. I didn't really have too much of a question, but if you wanted to comment on that, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Give me like in like one or two sentences, give me something to perhaps comment on, because I don't have much on that.
Okay, maybe just comment how I guess you kind of were already talking about it, but just I guess comment how when we read these literature of these other cultures or literature of even like Chinese, right? They have commies and there's different entities. How do we fit the stories of these other cultures within the scripture if their experiences were valid? Like, how do we fit like a tree spirit in the scripture, right? And
that's an excellent question. So thank you. I'm glad you reiterated that, because I was probably going to go in a different direction. So that's excellent. So let's see if I can organize this thought. Please come back anytime and, you know, and talk about whatever you like again as well. So let me go back to what I was saying about angels versus fairies, right? And how fairies, what I call fairies. Now, different cultures might call them different things. I don't think the Native Americans would call them fairies unless if they're referring. Now, I have Sean Walking Bear in the room. Maybe he'll come up and talk about this. And he's been really helpful. Just talking to him about Native American lore, if you want to call it that. I don't like to say mythology, you guys know, because, you know, that's the way you discredit something. But, you know, they also have their little people, right? They have their own versions of sirens and mermaids. They have all these similar things to what you see in Greek stories and in, as you mentioned, Asian, like Chinese and so on and so forth. There are a lot of commonalities, but I like what Paulie had brought up about or maybe what I was commenting on based on what he said on the different variations of animals. A bird is still a bird, whether you go to Africa or Asia or North America or South America, but there are variations. And I think within the spiritual world, there's a lot of different variations of the same thing. Like you're going to see these aquatic ladies that are really associated with the reptilians in some way, shape, or form, and they will draw men out to the water to their doom. This isn't just a Greek thing. This is actually in North America as well. We see this all over the world. So there's a legitimacy to this, so to like even water babies or whatever you want to say. Now, in one of the things you had mentioned, which I think needs to be talked about more, is the fact that there are spiritual realities in every single religion around the world. I'm going to quickly say I am not a universalist. Okay, I am not saying that all religions lead to heaven or to salvation or whatever you want to say. However, I think that some people they have been taught growing up blindly that all these other religions are false. All these people who pray to idols, it's all false. None of it's real. The only thing that is real is the Bible. That's the only thing that is a genuine, real spiritual experience. And then you have all these other religions listening to this going, we see spirits. We respond to them. They pray and they have their prayers answered. So at the end of the day, everyone is free out there. I am, I guess a polytheist. I believe that there's a whole pantheon of Elohim, of gods, or Allahayam, whatever you want to call them, archons, so on and so forth. And they are all over the world, and they answer prayer, and people see miracles and all these kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's who do you want to be in a covenant relationship with? Well, I want to be in a covenant relationship with Yahweh. And I believe the evidence is there. It is stunning that Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, if you want to call him that, Yahushua HaMashiach, that he literally inherited the entire world. I believe that the evidence is there. And I think scripture I should back that up. Not only does scripture say that, not only does it declare that, we see the evidence worldwide that he really is in control. He is King of Kings, Lord of Lords. He's the one that I want to worship. So yes, I could turn to other gods, legitimate gods, and worship them. But let's see where that gets us in the end. All right. So just best of luck if you're going to do that. I'm saying this because I don't want, I have, the older I get, the more I realize that I do not want to discredit other spiritual experiences. People have them. And there are, when we talk about the blessing and the curse, which is all through Deuteronomy, it's in the Bible, right? You choose the blessing or the curse. This blessing and the curse in this context specifically is in a covenant relationship with Yah and, living in the land and not living in the land. And we are not living in the land, which means that our descendants, our ancestors they chose the curse, and here we are. And it's important to repent for their wrongs as well as our own. That being said, there are other blessings and curses we can, that all people can choose to live, right? How we eat, how we exercise, how we live according to our finances, all these different things, how we treat our bodies and so on and so forth. And this is something that is a worldwide human experience. I do want to comment really quickly on what the giant tree said. That, okay, so that doesn't sound like creation so much as he created and they stewarded. It's sort of like, I wouldn't even say we create life, so to speak. All right, sure. I mean, that's a great point. He's speaking, of course, about the Anunnaki, and that could be very well be as well. I wasn't there, and I don't really know what happened. I do think that the Anunnaki, who were running the Sumerian culture, Babylon, ancient Babylon, where Abraham came out of, it's really interesting that they never once mention the Hebrew God, Yahweh. There are historians back in the 1800s and stuff, they were trying to make a case that Enki, who is Marduk's father, or Moloch's father, and I believe Moloch is Hasatan. But there were those who were arguing that Enki is Yahweh, and that has been, of course, according to the scholarly community, completely discredited. There's nobody out there taking that seriously. Some people might pick that up and run with it. My point is I don't think Yahweh, I think he was completely snubbed from the Anunnaki in the Sumerian culture, and in fact all the cultures that chose not to live a righteous lifestyle. And that has become very therapeutic for me. A lot of people, they really maybe get troubled by that, like they're like, why is my God not mentioned anywhere? And it's become very therapeutic to me, because for those of you who are walking this set apart life, and as the narrower the road gets for you and the less people you see on it, you see that you too are snubbed, you are forsaken, nobody is, taking you seriously, so on and so forth. They think you're the crazy one. That's personally how I think Yahuwah was treated by the other Anunnaki. I think he was just, it was the Father who honored him, because it was Yahuwah who personally, he learned at his feet. Everything that Yahushua HaMashiach said and did, he learned from the Father, and he committed no transgressions. Whereas with the other Anunnaki, you see them sleeping around, committing adultery, murdering. I mean, they're just like the Greek gods. They're just very, just naughty gods all the time in all their stories. But you don't see that with Yahushua HaMashiach. And I think that they snubbed him for it. So, all right. Let's, until I get the next question. But thank you for saying that, the giant tree. That was good. Okay, I was asked about the secret book of John. I'm not really sure what specifically, but the secret book of John, in my opinion, this is where a lot of you who are going, hopefully nobody, when I say you, hopefully nobody listening, but a lot of individuals within the community are going down this path to say that the God of the Old Testament is actually Satan. I don't even like talking about this. For a while I was thinking about doing a whole discrediting video, but at the end of the day, it became so apparent to me that every single week, as I go through my Torah portions, I am discrediting this worldview that the God of the Old Testament is Satan, which is essentially what the secret book of John is advocating. There's a reason it's called the secret book, is because they would pass it around to people who they felt were ready to receive it. And you're supposed to see Jesus as the liberator who came down to remove the demiurge from the equation. And that's the Old Testament God with his burdensome law, his instructions in righteous living that you are now free from, which is essentially a very Christian doctrine. And I think that the more we see people turn to righteousness, there's a balancing act between light and darkness. And the more people turn to the Torah, the more people are repulsed by it, and they're going down this route to say, no, we're throwing out the whole Old Testament. This is all Satan. It's all evil. It's all darkness. I think that's a very damnable act. I will point out really quickly that the reason why, it's a no-brainer for me, is that if you remove the whole Old Testament, you have serious problems with the New Testament at this point. The New Testament is only quoting from the Old Testament, just going through like all the epistle writers, even Messiah himself, they're just quoting from the Torah time and time and time again. So it's just very strange to me that if the Old Testament is a satanic religion, that you actually had Messiah being raised by satanic parents in a satanic childhood, in a satanic house, living according to satanic laws, just to come and say, by the way, I don't want you to keep Satanism anymore. It seems to me like a more better scenario would be to completely circumnavigate a satanic religion and have the Son of God come down and say, all those religions, including that one of Abraham and Moses, just those are all satanic. Just, follow me. And he, didn't do that. He chose to go and say, whatever Moses says, listen to him and do what he says. Okay. So that was just my response to the secret Apocryphon or secret book of John. If you were referring to the same one, if you were not, then my apologies. All right, let me go through here, and you're invited back up to speak.
Okay, man. I have an actual question this time, and it might be a deep question. It might take some time, but why do you think God placed man in the garden knowing that he was going to fail? Like, why do you think he set, I'm not going to say he set Adam up for failure, but why do you think, he put the knowledge of the tree of good and evil within his reach and kind of like allowed things to unfold the way that he did? Like, what do you think that was like to kickstart his plan on Earth? Like that was always part of the plan? Or do you think Adam kind of messed up God's original plan. And in your opinion, like, what was that original plan?
That's a really, okay, that is a an amazing theological question, of which only the greatest theological minds have attempted to answer this, but I will give a stab at it. Are you done with it? Did you have anything else you wanted to add before I go down this rabbit trail?
No. That's it. I just wanted to know your thoughts on it, because I know you have a great mind, and I wanted to know. So
there's this is actually what you just said is something that I would like to develop more. I'm not going to get to it right away because I have another big project in front of me right now, which I'm hoping that maybe she comes on. Oh, yeah, she is here. Maybe she'll talk about it. But anyways, so concerning this question, one thing that I want to dig into is some of more of what we call medieval theology. And many of these medievalists, including the mystics and others, they had this view that Adam, the creation of Adam and the setup for him to fall was necessary, in the sense that Messiah, or we say Yahweh, had always planned to become a human. He made all of creation with the purpose that he himself wanted to become eternally human. This is a very, very common medieval point of thinking. Whereas I think more Protestant thinking is, he chose to become a human because that was, in his wisdom, that was kind of the only way out, right? I would say, in a nutshell, that with Yah seeing, let's just assume that Allah Hayam, okay? When I say Allah Hayam, I hope everyone understands I'm using the Paleo-Hebrew word for God. It's kind of generic, but I'm talking about the Father, right? Our Father in heaven. That he can see, let's just assume, we don't know this, but let's assume he could see all possible scenarios. Let's assume, in maybe a multiverse situation, whatever, but there could be millions and millions of different possibilities in a chess game, and he could see all possible scenarios. For whatever reason, he picked the scenario he did. Okay, so we don't know why let's just assume that he decided in his wisdom this was the best outcome. And he knew that he was going to create something, and he didn't want robots, right? We all know this. He wanted, he knew that there was going to be some sort of transgression and so on and so forth. So I think he set Adam and Eve up in that situation. Now, going back to what I was talking about earlier about the Anunnaki, when you read the book of Adam and Eve, first Adam and Eve, it's kind of interesting because in there, when Yah approaches Adam, he says, and there's a lot of commentary we could talk about the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For example, in Hebrew thinking, it's a tree with mixed fruit. It's not the tree of knowledge. It's not the tree of evil. It's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And this is a problem, right? We are not to mix things. We're not to mix seeds. So it's kind of an interesting tree that is in the garden that has mixed seeds. So maybe it is an unholy tree from the beginning. According to the book of Adam and Eve, he says, the reason I didn't want you to go to that tree and eat from that tree, because I knew that if you went up to that tree, the serpent would be there and that the serpent would tempt you. So that's kind of an interesting explanation. It's a little bit different from a lot of the others we get. In other books, you get Satan kind of peering over the wall, and he uses the serpent, of course, as an avatar, and they blend together. I could go through a whole study on this, and the reason, according to the medieval mystics, they said the reason why he chose the serpent is because it's most like his nature. Of course, he's like a reptilian, kind of probably a seraphim type of angel, and the serpents are most like their kind. He gets into the serpent, he peers over the wall. It's when the guardian angels of Adam and Eve, they're appointed every hour, they have to go before the throne and worship him and give the report. So he knows when this is. He peers over the wall, he sees Eve, he's like, hey, psst, psst. And of course Adam's on the other side of the garden, and he's actually trying to get information. And because he knows that there's some way that he calls them to trip up, and he knows, of course, the best avenue to do this is through Adam's woman, right? You want to trip up any man, just get a naked woman into the equation. Just even if it's your wife, right? This was Adam's wife. This isn't inappropriate, right? This is his wife, but you get your naked wife in front of you, and she can get you to do a lot. Let me tell you, and women know this. but he's trying to figure out how to trip him up. And you have to think, like, in that moment when she points to that tree, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, Satan, I think he was Azazel, or we call him Sataneo or whatever you want to call him. I think he was like, what? I planted that tree. This is incredible. Like, this is incredible. The very tree that I planted is the one that they're not supposed to touch. I'm kind of going off point here, but yeah. So just to answer your question, in the best way that I can, I just think that it was that's the maybe here's another way to look at it. Did the fall of the angels happen before or after Adam? Okay, so let's assume that the fall of the angels, because a lot of accounts say by the second day, which is the reason for the creating of the firmament, because he needed to separate holiness above from the spoiled world below. Makes a lot of sense. It's a barrier not just for man, but for spiritual entities. And so last time during the Kingdom Verse, I specifically talked about, I was asked a question about what I thought if we are the fallen angels. And without going into all of that again, I mentioned that it's interesting how Satan caused a third of them to fall. We talked about a third of the fallen angels, or a third of the angels fell. And yet, where are they? They're gone. They're seemingly gutted out of the Bible. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're the demons. No, the demons are not the fallen angels. The demons are clearly, there are evil spirits that are identified as a number of things. But those are mostly the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, who were the son of the Watchers. And of course, you have the Watchers. They fell later, the 200. You have the Anunnaki, who were over the earth. They kind of did their thing and fell in groves. So I'm wondering if we are indeed the angels that were tempted and we fell at the hands of one of the 5 Satans that's mentioned in Enoch, that was part of the necessary idea too. That Yah's like, okay, look, I want to redeem these third that fell, or at least give them the opportunity, the chance. So in my knowledge of all the different scenarios, I'm going to create now a special creation, this man, Adam. I'm going to put him up in paradise. He's going to usurp. He's going to be in the place of where Azazel or Sataneo or whoever, or at least this cherub in Ezekiel sat, whoever this cherub is. He's going to be there now. And he's going to fall just like the cherub before him, but through him, I'm going to redeem these fallen entities. So that's the best I can come up with. Thank you for playing. Thank you. That was a great question, by the way. You're still there. Do you have anything more to add?
No, that was great. Thank you for answering.
All right. Well, when the giant tree asked this, when the angels have fallen in waves? Yeah, I definitely, like I mentioned, like there were the 200 watchers. They fell during the days of Enoch, or the days of Jared, and then you have the 70 shepherds, right? Were they redeemed? What happened with them? A lot of questions, right? So this is where I was getting at, is that angels all throughout history in Hebrew thinking have the potential of falling at any time. I mean, it's a terrible thought to think of Michael or Gabriel. I hope that they do not fall. I mean, I remember saying this years ago when I was studying Islam, and according to Islam, Michael, is major in their worldview. Oh no, was it Michael? No, or Gabriel? Now I forget. I'm live, and whatever. And I had stated, man, I hope he didn't fall. That would be really terrible. And just so everybody knows, I'm not advocating that they did, but this is something we all have to be on our guard with. And a lot of people are like, oh, when I die, I'm going to be like this robot and I can't sin. I'm going to be perfect. It's like, no, I don't know if that's actually, yeah. Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah. It wasn't Michael. Michael is the guardian of Israel, and Islam is of course very anti-Israel in those regards. But thank you for that. The giant tree. It's always hard when I'm live and I can't, source this stuff in front of me right away. And so when we are resurrected, or when we go to heaven, or wherever we go, paradise, or to the hidden wilderness, or New Jerusalem, right? Take your pick. Wherever we go, I do believe that in eternity we will have the decision to fall. It's a terrible thought, but that's the thing. If we do not enjoy living a righteous life now, right? Let's not fool ourselves. Just not fool ourselves. This is the thing. If you don't enjoy Yah's instructions in righteous living, okay, well, we'll just see how that goes in eternity. We need to guard the commands now. We need to enjoy. We need to love living a life that guards the commands. All right. Question: what year would Jesus have said he was in? Did people say it's the year 32 BC? No, at that time, a good question is what would be the Roman calendar at that time? I haven't done a deep dive into the Roman or Greek historians like Herodotus, or even maybe what Plato would have said the years were at that time. Clearly, the 32, the 30 BC, or even 70 AD or whatever, that came a few hundred years later. I do believe it's a part on my timeline. It's part of this, what I call the 7,000-year timeline deception. I believe that the Millennial Kingdom started in the 500s, and you have 500 years from Messiah leading up to that time when they created a lot of the history and world system that we have today. That being said, when you look at the Greek LXX, so if you were to ask a Hebrew, and that's why I guess I had to specify, are we talking to Romans, Greeks, Persians? They all had different calendars. If you were to talk to a Hebrew in the first century, most likely he would tell you, he would be going off the Greek LXX, and he would tell you that they were right around the year 5,500 from Adam. From Adam, they were about 5,500 years old. So they wouldn't say this is 30 AD. They would say 5,500, right? And that's, of course, part of my whole thing about the Millennial Kingdom started in the year 6,000, which was in the 500s. That would now pit us in the whereabouts of 7,500. I do believe that I know a lot of people are really into flamenco. That didn't really take me places. I was kind of looking into him like 5 years ago. I'll gladly look into him again if anybody wants to give me some solid research. What people love to do with flamenco, they shout his name, be like, oh, he just mixed up all the timelines, and he put like Troy, 700 years ago, and he put this and that, but there's no really resolution to it. It's just history's all mixed up. I haven't seen very good, clear, concise timelines that really make sense to me out of that. If somebody can do it, I'd gladly look at it. I really would, from the bottom of my heart. Okay. Cecil, come up on stage and let me know what's on your mind.
Okay, I hope everybody can hear me okay.
I can hear you just fine. I can hear you just fine, Cecil.
All right, this is kind of piggybacking off of the last caller's question. What are your thoughts on predestination? Because I listened to you, and I know you're familiar with Saint Garcia, but I've heard you mention something about us making choices before we came into our physical bodies that lead to the circumstances we're in, and I always thought that made sense to me. And also you mentioned something about forgetfulness. So we think that, we make a choice, no one's seeing our lives, what's going to happen. And we make a choice and, okay, I'm going to follow you, and then we drink that cup of forgetfulness. And then, we enter into our bodies. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with, and I'll say abstractly, because I haven't read every point that Zen has stated, but I am in agreement with Zen on preexistence, and I have teachings on it myself. And so the idea is that now you had mentioned predestination, which for me is maybe kind of slightly maybe a different discussion. I know it ultimately will get mixed in with predestination, but I think what you were going at here was predestination, maybe not in the Calvinist sense so much, but kind of in the sense that you didn't use the word caste system. But if you were to go into Eastern religions, they would talk about this, right? That, you are in your placement in life because of maybe something you did in your former life. Now, just so everybody clear, Zen Garcia does not believe in reincarnation. He's not talking about that. So in the pre-existent idea is that in our transgression, when, according to what it says in the Book of the Nazarene or the Book of the Illuminators, Messiah says that we were bastards, we became bastard sons of God, and he came to bring us back to him. We each did something in the former life in heaven. We transgressed in a certain way that we were where we're at in this life now may be a result of that. And give you guys all a maybe an example, an abstract example. If you give somebody like a little bit of authority and see what they do with it. A good example, maybe even on like social media platforms or something like that. Like, give someone a microphone and see how they respond, right? And some people, you just give them a little bit and they just go hyper crazy with it. And so the thing is that in the redemption process, it appears to be there's a type of scenario that, there's something that each of us can handle. And we have our limits and kind of our path set for us in this life. Is that kind of what you're looking for? I mean, that's definitely abstractly, without going into any tax on it. That's kind of how I would feel. The couple forgetfulness, I have no choice but to believe that there is some sort of forgetting that happens. It is described in different ways according to what maybe text or worldview we look at. Sometimes it's as simple as an angel like bopping you on the head or something like that on your way into the earth. I think that's how maybe Judaism talks about it. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Cecil?
Yeah, I did mean preexistence, not predestination.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. So I'm totally on board with preexistence. I do think that there is I'm on board with soul flames, all those kind of stuff. One of the things I love talking about is marriage, and this idea that I do believe marriage is eternal. And I did cover it in my last Torah portion at the very end last week, where Messiah, he clarifies when he says that there will be no giving in marriage in eternity because we'll be like the angels. People take that to mean that till death do you part, you die, you're separated, marriage is over, all of that you experience, it's done with. I don't believe that at all. He says that the marriage is fulfilled at that time. We often in the Western world, we get this idea of being fulfilled as it's done away with. But no, it's actually we have met our goal. And he says that there is a spirit that we're going to be more attracted to, meaning the way I read that is that maybe we botched it in this life. And, maybe a person dies divorced and with nobody in their life, maybe they botched it, but maybe there was a spirit that they really did bond with and that they are going to be wielded together in eternity. But I think that I do believe that one of the big attractions in this life, the reason why many of us came here, maybe not just purely for redemption purposes, that it's also, we are coming here to find our eternal spouse. Maybe they were pre-selected even in heaven. We had to find each other. It's kind of like the plot line to the Matrix 4, if you guys ever watched that one. And and so this is one of the things that the Watchers did wrong, is that they chose to come down and take women for themselves, and they circumnavigated the entire process. For those of you who know that I talk about Mary Magdalene, and I do believe that Mary Magdalene is the betrothed of Messiah, people are like, oh, well, that's the Watchers all over again. No, it's not the Watchers. No, Yahweh did not come down and snatch human women up and take them off and do something with them and create giant babies with them. No, he came down to live the perfect life of a human, given full reign to everything that is good and pure in humanity, of course, and marriage is something that is good and righteous and holy. He had full access to that. And I think that he was able to come down to the earth and select his bride, get his bride, which probably played into preexistence, daughter of Zion, all that kind of stuff. So all that to say is, I'm totally on board with preexistence. It makes more sense to me than anything else. Let me just say this really quickly. He stepped down. So one of the ways that I ask, you may have heard me ask other people this when I interview them. I say, what is truth? That's the question that Pontius Pilate asked. What is truth? How do you determine what truth is? Now, of course, hopefully my listeners, we're all on the same page, that we believe that Yahweh is true and that Yahushua HaMashiach is King of Kings, Lord of Lords. His testimony is true and we could take him at his word, right? So we would say scripture is true and that the instructions in there are the instructions for righteous living, okay? That being said. But in other regards, when we're looking at a lot of different theories and texts and things like that, and we're like, okay, what do you choose? How do you figure out what the truth is? Well, for me, it's when you have all these loose pieces out there and you come up with something, you see something, and it ties all the loose ends, and it all comes together and it makes this coherent picture. For me, the truth is actually something that it pieces everything together, right? You got all these puzzle pieces and you see the picture, you're like, this is amazing. That's what the Millennial Kingdom did to me. I've heard other people give that testimony. They're like, when they heard that the Millennial Kingdom happened and that they're living the little season, nothing made more sense to them in all the world. And I agree with that. That it makes so much sense. Nothing makes more sense than we are living in the little season of deception. All right. Now, one of the things that got to me for years is this idea that we all hear about, sperms, and we all started out as one, of course, and that is true, but there will be millions of them, this gunshot sprints, and you all shoot off, and it's all based on this fact that it was that exact second in time when your parents had their indiscriminate love. Apparently, my parents were married, but apparently I was an accident baby, because the story is that there was a guest staying at their house and they gave them their bedroom. And so they didn't have any, they slept on the floor of my brother's room. He was in a crib, and they, couldn't contain themselves. And in that, apparently my mom never wanted to have a baby again. And so they didn't go for the birth control. And they're like, well, let's just try to get it around the goalie and maybe not make it in this time. And of course I was conceived. And it's always really bothered me, this idea that, maybe like in life, I'm speaking to those of you out there, maybe you're a terrible runner, maybe you're terrible at sports, maybe you'll never achieve anything. But apparently with the millions and millions of other sperms that were shot up in that very second, I guess that was your Olympic moment. You achieved it, you made it, you beat them all to it, and you got in, and there was life, right? And for me, that always created a lot of anxiety and just kind of maybe even depression and sadness. And when I realized, when I came into the study through Second Esdras and some of those books, that all souls, they have an origin, and that there is a placement on the timeline when each of us are anticipated to be born through the womb of the earth into the matrix of the earth, and that we all were here for a purpose, right? Why we have the parents and the family we do is maybe a question to ponder more. But the fact is that every single one of you, you're not a freak. You're not here by accident. You were all intended to be here. You were created, not just by your parents, but by Yahweh, or you can say Elohim, the Father of all spirits, right? That is such an exciting thought. And you know how we were saying earlier tonight, how the Elohim, you can say the Anunnaki if you want, and they said, let us create man in our image, right? So you see Adam coming forth. He is created you see mankind in general, right? They come forward created in the image of these gods. Well, that's the amazing thing about we are little creators. We are also tasked with creating. And when we have children, they are created in our image. Isn't that incredible? They're a pre-existent soul. They were created by the Father of all spirits. But they themselves are created in our image. And that maybe even clarifies what somebody had said earlier, that, what the Anunnaki and Elohim were doing. They weren't maybe necessarily creating, maybe they were just cultivating, kind of like we do. Now, someone point out here that, I'm going to be celebrating the feast tomorrow, actually. So tomorrow starts the fall feast for me. Some of you are already halfway through it. You're going into Sukkot. Hopefully everyone is having a great feast time right now. So let me go back through my photos here of the Smithsonian. This here is the World War II memorial. Now, the World War II memorial was built 20 years ago. I think it was 2003, 2004. I'd have to look at it. It's only 20 years old. This thing is crap. Excuse my language. It is falling into disrepair. I took a picture here of just one of the pillars, and you could see this crack just going all the way up. It is. So what's interesting is when you're looking at these mud flood buildings in Washington, D.C., and for clarification purposes, I currently do not believe that the buildings in Washington, D.C. are Millennial Kingdom buildings. I would call them Tartarian buildings. I would say that they are short season Enlightenment buildings. I believe they, probably predate the mud flood, certainly the Capitol building. And, then you go down through history, and you know how like the earliest pyramids are like the best pyramids, and then the newer they get, they just become crappier and crappier until they're like a mound of mud and rocks, right? It's the same thing with buildings. And look at the Lincoln Memorial, look at the Jefferson Memorial, right? They are these gorgeous buildings. And yes, we do have construction photos of the Lincoln Memorial. Make of that of what you will. But nowadays, you could look at the latest ones that were built at any time in the 1900s or the 21st century, and look at, say, the Vietnam Memorial. It's a very touching memorial. Okay, I'm not throwing that into credibility, into doubt. It's a very touching memorial, but it's a slab wall. You look at the World War II Memorial. It's not a building like the Lincoln Memorial or the Jefferson. It's just a bunch of pillars they put up. The World War I Memorial, the Roosevelt Memorial, all these things, they're stones they put up. It doesn't compare to the old construction. So I thought this was interesting that you see all these old buildings still standing. They were so beautifully built by whoever built them. And they're just falling. They're just cracking up now. 20 years old. This thing already needs replaced. All right. Now we go into the Smithsonian here. And this is a mastodon. And for those of you who listened to the video I put out a couple weeks ago now, I need to finish it. I plan to read more from the newspaper clippings of giants in the 1800s this Thursday, if you want to tune in. And one thing, it was really upsetting me. I mean, I was going through the Smithsonian and I was loving everything. I was just digging it all, even the lies, the deception. I just wanted to see it with my own eyes. But I get to the mastodons, and I was actually getting upset by this because I had just read through this giants book how the first giants that were being rolled out, you had all these professionals, these doctors and stuff. They're coming out. They had seen tons of human skeletons. They know what humans look like. And they're like, this is an 18 to 19 foot tall giant human. And then, of course, they had to nip it in the bud, and they came and said, no, it's a mastodon. All these people, they misgendered or misidentified it, and it is really a mastodon. And of course, they then hid the bones after that. It was put on display when it was called a giant. All these people are looking at it going, yeah, that's a human giant. Apparently, they didn't know what an elephant looked like. I mean, they make it like, oh, you didn't know what a mastodon. No, they knew what an elephant looked like, guys. It's an elephant. A mastodon is just a bigger elephant. Then they hid the bones, and they're like, okay, well, you can't see it now, right? Now that we've proven it was a mastodon, you can't see it. So I go there and I look at their mastodons, beautiful bones that they have there. And I'm getting, this is the only time I was getting upset. I was kind of getting heated. I'm looking at this going, there is no possible way you would, with any of this, you would identify this as a human. It doesn't have fingers. Look at those. That is clearly like toes that you would find on an elephant. Look at its rib cage. Look at its neck. Look at its shoulders. Look at its arms. There is nothing on there that looks, even if you were to stand that up at 90 degrees, there is no possible way that would look like a human. So there's that. Let's keep looking. What else do we got here? Oh, Dimetrodons. I do love Dimetrodons. Now, I've been through this whole dinosaur hoax thing, debate now for going on 10 years. I've listened to both sides. I do believe that many dinosaur fossils are hoaxes, but just because it is a very corrupt, paleontology is a very corrupt field. It seems like I've known that for 20, 30 years now. Probably back when I was a kid in the 80s, people will tell me how corrupt paleontology is. Well, the White House is corrupt and Wall Street is corrupt, and there are corrupt lawyers and legal systems and that stuff. But, it doesn't mean that the White House doesn't exist. Right now, I'm kind of coming out here, and I'm finally taking a stance on, I will bring anybody on. You want to debate why dinosaurs are all hoax. None of them existed. I don't believe that's the case. These Dimetrodon, they had a very impressive collection of Dimetrodons. And this is something that most people don't realize with dinosaurs, all right? Dinosaurs are not that big. They are shocking. I was shocked at how little their collection of dinosaurs were in size. Because we look at movies like Jurassic Park, and they're looking at the sauropods, and they're like, whoa, and they're like way up in there in the trees, and these huge giant, the velociraptors are bigger than people and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, in real life, actually, they were really small. Take case in point, this Dimetrodon right here. This was maybe a 5.5 footer, maybe 6 feet. And this is the biggest they can come up with. That's nothing, guys. I've said this many times. I live on an alligator preserve. They're right outside my window right now. I see alligators almost every day. I go out there and I see them. I watch their habits. They're very lazy. They're not aggressive, very rarely aggressive. I mean, they have to really be hungry and know they're going to get their kill. There's a reason why most people, when they're attacked by an alligator, it's almost always their foot gets bitten. Why? Because that's how lazy they are. Anyways, I could totally see these Dimetrodons. They're the same size as the alligators outside my house. I could totally see these. They look like alligators to me. They look like alligator bones. I could see them outside. It would be pretty crazy too to see their big old fins above the water. Alligators, they when they're like looking at you, they're standing straight up and their feet are on the ground. It's kind of creepy to look at if you ever see them in an aquarium. But I could totally see like these guys buried in the water and the mud, and you just see their fin coming up to keep them warm. I could totally see it. Stegosauruses. They had an impressive collection of those. Maybe they're all fake. I don't really know. But here's the thing about them. They weren't that big. If you guys saw them with the Lost World Jurassic Park, like they made them out like these gigantic, no, they're the size of a cow, guys. A cow. They weren't that big. They were very small. And that's, I think, part of what's getting a lot of people kind of upset. Now with the T-Rex here, this is, of course, a picture of the T-Rex eating a Triceratops there. I went and there was a guy standing by there, Smithsonian guy. I went up and I asked him all the right questions. I'm like, okay, is this a cast? Is this the real bones? Are the real bones back in the back? And the Smithsonian has been wising up because I think a lot of, guys like me, and I was being very respectful, probably a lot of people come in, jerks, and they ask these questions. And so now in front of all these dinosaur bones, they're actually or I should say fossils, they're telling you what is real and fake. And take this for what it's worth, everybody, okay? However you feel about this. And I said, is that skull real? Is that a real T-Rex skull? And he said, no, it's not. And I'm like, okay. So I said, what about the other bones? He said, almost every bone you see there is real. You're looking at the real bone, but not the skull. And he said, we do have the skull in the back, but it's worth so many millions of dollars, which is actually true. It's worth so many millions of dollars, we don't cart it out. I'm like, okay, take that for what it's worth. Either they have it in the back or they don't. At least they're telling you now, and they put them on plaques there. That's not the real skull. It's a casing. And they will also tell you now how many of them are composites, meaning like this Stegosaurus you might be looking at like 5 different Stegosauruses, right? They're just taking all these different bones and putting them together. That could be the case as well. All right. So, but you know what I found really interesting there is that for how big dinosaurs apparently are. Okay, let's say that Noah, as I suspect, was anywhere from 15 to 30 feet tall. All right. Now, some people are going to shoot back. Oh, yeah, but no, the giants were evil and he would be a giant. No. The giants of Enoch were like 100 feet or bigger. They were massive. They were huge. Okay. So they were giants in those days to the 30-footers. But, mankind was bigger. Now, that being the case, if these creatures are pre-Diluvian, I actually don't believe they are. I think that the Jurassic, Cretaceous, all that, I actually believe that was before the recreation of Genesis 1, whatever. But let's say, for sake of argument, that they did exist at the same time as Adam and Noah. Fact of the matter is Noah would have been so huge, he could have wrestled that T-Rex to the ground. The sauropods would have been the size of a horse. And they were actually not that big. I was very shocked at how little the sauropods really were. To a kid, they're massive, but I'm like, they're not that big. And going back to this giant sloth, which I absolutely adore. I love sloths. So this is a depiction of what a giant teddy bear sloth would have looked like. You want to go hug it, right? This was the biggest thing they had in there, guys. This was huge. I was so overwhelmed with how big this giant sloth was. And I'm thinking, here we're saying all these dinosaurs are fake, and yet the giant sloth is bigger. He's almost as big as the T-Rex. It was a very big giant sloth. All right. Here's this was good. You're looking at Neil Armstrong's actual suit, Apollo 11 mission. I love the Apollo 11 through 17 room. And they have his, you can see right there, they have his, hold on, let me erase this comment here. You can see his footprint there, right? And there's his boots. So, so my wife, Sarah, and we're really respectful, right? We're not trying to ruin people's experience, but she goes right up there and she looks down, and you could barely, they purposely kind of hide it. But if there's a crack there, you can look, and she's like, the footprint doesn't match up. It's not the same footprint. And the Smithsonian knows this. They know it's a problem. Now, if you go to Reuters, they will tell you, they will fact check you, and they say, well, the reason that the footprint doesn't match up with Neil Armstrong's boots is because they had these boot casings on the Apollo 11 mission that they were walking around with that went over these boots. It's like, okay, I could buy that. But then they say that they, before they left on their capsule, they dumped them on the moon. They left them on the moon. Now, they might argue, well, you know, they needed to lessen weight or whatever. Okay, I can buy that. But the problem I'm having with this is that they were wearing this for protection on the moon. So at what point are you going to start stripping down your, you know, like your protective gear on the moon to leave it behind? And of course, it's very convenient they left it behind. They have no, what I'm saying here is I think they had a problem that it didn't match up, and they had to come up with a story. And that's that. Now, this was really crazy to look at. This is the actual, there's a price tag right there, $38 million. $38 million. Now, they say for the $38 million price tag, they built 3 of these. And this one was used for the Apollo 15 through 17. It might have been used for the 14, not quite sure. But this was used for the last 3 missions for sure. This is the actual one. And we walked up to this and we're just like, oh my goodness, those are literally lawn chairs. And that's like tinfoil. Like a person could build this in their garage. They could take basic welding equipment. They could take some tires and they could weld on the steel frame and put some lawn chairs. What are those, ice coolers? They look like ice coolers. They're like styrofoam or something. We were looking at this and going, how in the world do you come up with a 38 million? That should cost tops in today's currency. You should be able to build that for under $1,000. $500. You could probably scraps probably a couple hundred, probably do less than $200 in today's currency. 38 million. 1969, 1970. In 1969, guys, you could buy a hamburger for 18 cents. You could feed a family for hamburgers, fries, and Coke for like $2.50. A whole family in a restaurant. $38 million. Unbelievable. All right, some of the other things I was looking at. Now we are in the, this is the Library of Congress. And some really interesting stuff there. I noticed there was a huge emphasis on the age of Pisces, the 2 fish. And of course, when you see these 2 fish together, that is the male and female. You guys, know, I believe that the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, is feminine, and that is the feminine divine that's been here all along, our mother. You see the masculine and the feminine together all through this age. So I found this interesting, a huge focus on this. Not only that in the House of Representatives, these 2 fish, I've seen these 2 fish, even by itself, they look like those dolphin creatures that you see all over. It was just interesting that they were identifying Age of Pisces by these 2 dolphin-like creatures. Not only that, okay, well, let's see what this is. Okay, so then they have these ancient books, and I'm looking at this going, I was talking to my wife, I'm like, tell me what you see here. And it's like, well, it's an angle of a city. I don't remember what city this is. And I'm like, okay, right. So why not, if they're going to draw a map, why draw it at an angle like this? I mean, I'm getting the impression that somebody was up in the sky. This is like the perspective of somebody in a hot air balloon or some sort of air transportation. It's so strange when you see these old maps like this, and they're very precise. And they're being drawn from the sky, from the perspective of the sky, and not just like a kind of a flat thing, directly overhead. They look exactly like you see in the sky. Here they had other books here, and this is part of their endless propaganda. And I totally want to get my hands on this book now. Unfortunately, I don't think it's been translated into English. And they said that this book, it was a medieval book, and of course, they're basically saying that all the stuff that came out of the medieval ages, it was all fake. They were spoofing everything. They weren't taking anything seriously. And apparently this book was about different cultures around the world that, probably looks like Tartarian type cultures. And they're like, none of this is real. Don't believe this. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Here back in the House of Representatives again, I was seeing the swastika everywhere. Now I understand someone's going to fact check me out there that the Nazi swastika goes in the opposite direction. If you do your research on the swastika, you will see them going in both directions. There's a lot of esoteric stuff with it. This was both of these were on the ground, and people were just walking right over these. And I'm standing there. The swastika was everywhere. I saw it once. I'm like, oh, and then I started looking, and it's just in every room in the House of Representatives. The swastika, people. And they haven't changed it. You would think after the World War II, they'd be like, yeah, we got to scrub the swastika from here. I guess they get away with it because it's in the opposite direction. But that's pretty crazy. And there's a lot of the swastika has a lot of meaning in any kind of civilization that's older than 200 years old. Getting into the statues, these were just mind blowing. And this is I'm standing in front of these statues that are hundreds of years old, so they say, and I believe it. And it's a solid chunk of marble, just one block of marble. And they're doing this like these 3D effects where you're seeing their clothing, and the clothing is loose, and you could see through the actual fabric, right? You could see the skin on the other side. And this is they tell you that they did this with a chisel, just like a hammer and a chisel. What I want to see is like Michelangelo and these guys who were carving with the statues. Where are all the throwaways, right? That they didn't do a very good job at. There should be whole quarries full of this stuff. This is so perfect, so beautiful, and it can't be replicated today by people with a chisel. And they can do this with like 3D printers and other things like that. It's just absolutely amazing. And that, of course, that tells us that they had a technology that they're hiding from us, something maybe comparable to what we can do today. This as well. Here's another one. I took quite a few of these statues. Very impressive. This one here is one of my favorites, and I have actually shown this in past work. So I was really excited to walk in a room and see an actual statue head that I have commented on in past papers to stand right in front of it. And it's just mind-blowing to see this veil over her face, and you could see the details of her eyes underneath and her nose and her mouth. And I will remind you, this is one solid block of stone of granite. Here's another. This one doesn't have the as much of the 3D effect, but it's still highly impressive. Okay, there's David. All right, so here's another kind of mind-blowing thing. They had, when I walked into these series of rooms, I had no idea they would have all this medieval stuff. I was in heaven. I was in a slice of heaven, or I should say a slice of the kingdom of heaven. I mean, I'm like, this is it. I've arrived. If I could go on vacation to anywhere, it would be the Byzantine Empire. I wish I could just go back in time and live there and talk to them and see what life was like. And so they had all these beautiful wood blocks. So apparently in the Middle Ages, they weren't doing the stone blocks as much. They were doing wood. Highly impressive, nevertheless. But what I really loved is that they basically said these are unidentified saints. They didn't even know who they were. These are apparently just carvings in wood, perfectly, beautifully preserved, of these saints who walked the earth during the Dark Ages. We don't know what their names are. So I'm asking the question, are these, depictions of resurrected saints? This one here is my absolute favorite. And for those of you who have been watching you can call it an abysmal show if you would like, The Rings of Power. Also, just want to point out why Jennifer Hartz, if you want to come forward, raise your hand and come up and speak. I'd love to talk to you tonight. If you guys have seen The Rings of Power, there's that one elf in there. He's the black guy. and he has like a breastplate, a shield that has the Green Man on it. Now, I'm not going to go through all my Green Man research again. You can see the video. It was done a couple months ago on YouTube, and I have the paper on my website. You guys can see my conclusions that I don't think the Green Man is the big bad, icky dude. And people will immediately point out, well, yeah, but there are evil green men spirits out there. Yes, there are, guys. There are. This is going back to what we were talking about earlier. There are true spirits out there that are evil, but that doesn't discredit the good spirits, right? There are evil humans, but that doesn't make all humans evil. That's the same thing in the spiritual world. That being said, here you have an actual unidentified portrait of somebody in the Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, Dark Ages, whatever. I believe it's Millennial Kingdom. And there is a green man type of figure on his breastplate. Nobody knows who this guy is. And I'm again asking the question, is this one of the saints? Is this one of the, the protectors of the realm, like we see in the Rings of Power or the Lord of the Rings stories? You guys know who that is. They're Remus and Romulus, raised by a wolf. Here's another beautiful depiction of an unidentified person living in the late Middle Ages, carved out of wood. Why am I showing you this picture here? This is another, what I would call a Mandela effect. And in my, lion, I should point that out. You see the lions on the shoulders there. So you see a green man figure, a lot of foliage, and then these two lions on the side. I would, if I could put anything in my house, I would put this in my house, like right here by my desk. I just stare at it all day. I think this is just a lovely, lovely piece of art. So in my research on the Mandela effect, there's the three wise men, right? And of course it's a song, We Three Kings, and people will point out that, like, OMG, the Bible doesn't say we three kings, it's just the wise men. Now, I will point out that in my reality that I came from, it was always in the Bible just three magi, or kings from the east, right? There were no three wise men. That was only in a song. Not that I'm discrediting that, because I do believe that people maybe really did have the memory of reading in the Bible the three kings. Now, I point that out because as I was doing the research on that a couple of years ago, I was really surprised to find that all through the Byzantine Empire, through the Middle Ages, they were really strong on these three kings. It was a reality. It wasn't just magi. It was actually literally three kings that came from the east, and one of them was a black guy. And so you could see them here. There's two white guys and a black guy, which holds to all their stories. And so, one of my theories on the Mandela effect, I don't talk about it enough, is that a lot of these realities that are kind of coming together, if you think about multiple rivers and they maybe all pour into the same river, and then that river flows into the sea, it's something similar, that we're seeing a multitude of realities that are actually legitimate realities that are coming into a singularity event. And so it's not necessarily always about like something that's evil, or like, oh, that's so messed up, that changed. It's like, no, actually, it's the same thing with the wolf and the lamb versus the lion and the lamb. I don't believe that the wolf is evil. It's a reality we live in now. I do come from the lion and the lamb reality, but I could see a scenario theologically. There is some very good theological points to say why it could be the wolf and the lamb. So that being said, I see a scenario, or maybe multiple scenarios through history, where there were literally three wise men that have two white, one black. They have come into our consciousness where we have this song about we three kings, even though our Bible, as it stands today, and in my reality, it was always just kings from the east, or magi. This is still late Middle Ages. Here you have a pan, a ham pan guy, probably a rape kit for all I know. It looks like the top would be lifted off. So usually that's kind of what this was. And they would have them in a house, and they would put things in there to make the little girls woozy. And of course, there's demons all around it. Unfortunately, I felt like it was, they put this right in front of this beautiful tapestry. So this was a massive, talk about how little the dinosaurs were, but they look big. This was massive, but in the picture, it looks really small. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to bring Jennifer Hartz on. You're welcome to come up on stage, and let's talk, and I'll finish this later. Whenever you come up. And I remind everybody, if people have been asking me questions in YouTube, my apologies. Yeah, Lisa asked a great question here. How would they detail the eyes behind the veil without destroying the veil? Okay, well, Jennifer, come up to stage. You have to. Oh, I have to invite you back up. Yeah, I sent you the invite, so please come on up. All right. So this tapestry, I have fallen in love with tapestries now that I've been researching them, and this was massive. And of course, tapestries were done by women through a spindle. And so, whereas the art world, we're told, was male dominated, tapestries were done by women. And so they tell a very unique story. Let's see if I have another photo of this. Oh, here's a better photo. And so they're really big on the lady and the unicorn hunts, things like that. Well, this one here was, oh man, I wish I had the title of this in front of me, but it is showing a depiction of Messiah reigning over the earth with all his kings and priests, men and women. It is beautiful. It's very faded. It's barely survived. But again, I kind of think this is one of those things that have survived, that was telling you, like, that was just the reality of the world, that he was reigning and that his saints were on the earth. Okay, Jennifer, welcome. Catch her on your mic and let me know what's on your mind.
There we go. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So would like to talk just a little bit about the project that I've been working with Noel to create, and it's going to be a fiction imprint of the TUC publishing house. It's going to be called Shelves of Shalom Publishing. We would like to create novels in all genres of fiction that would be geared towards the Torah keeping community.
That's right. So I am really excited to be working with Jennifer. And this, I guess, is her really official introduction. And I'm hoping that she has a presence in this community, just as for those of you who come to Discord, you see Pamela and Rebecca over there and Polly and so on and so forth. So, yeah, what I want to do with when it comes to the truth, I just want people to come to the truth, and I will go look at any avenue possible. And so we are, to reiterate what Jennifer just said, and Jennifer is heading this up. I'm so excited to be working with her. For those of you who want to be an author of fiction, and we are asking, there is a market out there. There are Torah-based individuals, right? And you can send in your manuscripts and to Jennifer. Now on the website right now, believe it or not, Jennifer, even though the website's not ready to go, it's going to be called Shelves of Shalom. That is going to be the imprint, the kind of the break off company under the publishing house underneath the Unexpected Cosmology. You can send them in to Jennifer and your manuscripts, and we want to.
Yeah, that's right. We have the guidelines are up now. The website is still under construction, and I've been working with a graphic artist named Kim Gillum, and she's actually part of the TUC community. So I'm really excited to have connected with her. But we do have guidelines for submission posted up there on how to submit, like, your query letter or your manuscript. So please follow the guidelines. We're going to stick with just older, like adult, NA, YA, and NG. That's new adult, young adult, and middle grade. Kids books right now are picture books. So definitely just chapter books. But yeah, check it out.
And I do have on the TUC website, until the website's ready to go, I do have a Shelves of Shalom publishing for you to send in your submissions, and we have the policy right there. And just so you guys know, because TUC keeps growing, and I'm taking on more and more of an administrative role. Of course, I'm the senior pastor here at this ministry, but I want my fingerprint to be on everything that I put out to a degree. Like if I do start a music publishing house, which I do want to do, I'm not a musician, so don't count on me coming out with any music. In this case, though, because I am a writer, to help launch Shelves of Shalom, I right now am working on bringing out a book of fiction, and I'll have more details as we come up. It's a project that I'm actively working on right now to get out to you guys. And I can tell you that that everything that I have learned in the Truth of the Realm, pretty much I'm trying to put into one cohesive package in a very translatable and likable story. Hopefully it's gonna be a likable story, because characters matter more, but the concepts are there, and there's a lot of layers to this. So anyways, yeah, was there anything else you wanted to add, Jennifer? Of course, you're an author yourself, and we're going to be
future story, which will be hopefully coming out pretty soon. It's going to be called The Emerald Queen: The Tale of Tia Tepe. If you've been following Noel at all, you've probably heard him drop the name Tia Tepe at some point. She was one of the daughters of King Zedekiah when Jerusalem fell, and according to the Bible, Jeremiah took her and her sisters to Egypt after the fall of Jerusalem. Now, Jeremiah's story ends there in Egypt, but there's an Irish legend that says he took Tia Tepe and her sisters to Ireland. So my novel follows basically through Tia Tepe's point of view this story, and then into Ireland and how it intermingles with Irish mythology. And it's such an amazing story. So I'm really looking forward to it getting out there.
Yeah. So, and we'll bring you on when your novel's ready to go, and we'll talk about. And thank you for actually correcting me, because I always call her T, but Tia. So I'll go with that in the future. As you guys know, that I put out a lot of books that are kind of like papers, right? The research papers talking about specific topics. But I want to get out there anything that I'll make videos. I'll do whatever I need to do to get the truth out there to people. And so this is a great avenue for a lot of people who are heavy readers to put the truth into to fiction. So if the enemy is doing it, we should be doing it too. So, all right. Good. Anything else, Jennifer?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much. And just looking forward to submissions and looking forward to getting this off the ground.
All right. Yeah. And we'll be bringing you on in the future. And I'll be, as soon as we definitely launch this, I'll be talking about this a lot more. I'm really excited for the future of TUC and all the different, different projects we're working on. So, all right. Well, let's get back at this. I have about 10 more minutes before I'm going to finish. If anybody else wants to come up and speak in Discord, do so now. I will scroll through here and see if I missed any questions. Still looking at some of the stuff. This is also medieval. I was trying to figure out what in the world is this thing. I think it looks like an ashtray. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I guess they needed ashtrays then, right? That's what it looks like to me. Interesting object. All right. So this here is, of course, Michael putting down the dragon. I was excited to see any kind of artwork on this. And of course, their perspective was that this was a past event, not a future event, so far as I'm concerned. It was more recently, post-mud flood, 1800s, 1900s, where we started developing these futurism and all that kind of stuff. And but I do want to point out with the serpent, you know what? I'm not going to point that out with the serpent. I'm going to wait till I get to the St. George. This was pretty... I was seeing this painting, was pretty funny because Adam's like, this looks like it should be a meme, but look closely at this. What is going on? Well, you have some residue right there. You have the lion and the lamb laying together. So right there, you have some lion and the lamb residue. That was exciting to see. Here's another just wood carving of, I know he's like the Egyptian, Pope guy, right? I don't know. Maybe their hats aren't all that they're cracked up to be, what we've been told. But there he is giving his street creds right there, Age of Pisces, the two fingers together. This was interesting here because you guys know I love to look at Mary Magdalene stuff. Every time I saw a passion scene, I'm looking close at it. And this here, I just 3 weeks ago covered the Mary Magdalene in the bridal gowns of the red and the gold that you see all through the Middle Ages. And so here you see Mary Magdalene dressed in a bridal gown that is red and gold. And interestingly enough, of course, she would be, if you can look just below Messiah, that's Mary Magdalene there. A lot of times the artist will let you know who she is. They'll put the jar right next to her. But here, interestingly enough, there is an angel underneath the cross holding up a grail. And the blood is actually pouring into the grail. And this is pure Arthurian Mary Magdalene stuff. I am going to. I finally worked up the courage, probably the next week or two, to come out with my Mary Magdalene and the Holy Grail paper. The results I did come with based on looking at medieval descriptions, and I'll, at the end of the day, you can either agree with it or not. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. But whether or not you agree that she is the Holy Grail, what I want to show in the paper is that those who were talking about it at that time in history believed it to be so. So you could disagree with them, saying you're wrong, I don't agree with these people. I just want to show you that that's what these people believed. So hopefully we can all come at it from that angle. This was a fascinating depiction. It may have been one of my favorite paintings there. And for those of you who remember when I did the 541, the year of the apocalypse. So you have 536, 537. 536 was the year of fire, when the sun and the moon were darkened for entire like a year and a half. And then it leads into this great plague, the plague of Justinian, 541, in which the entire world's population was almost wiped out in about 6 months' time. And I had stated in there that it appears that this is the event when people were, the people who were dying were reporting that they were seeing these spirits. They would call them demons, many of them. They were coming and visiting them and either whispering into their ear that their number was up, or tapping them. They would touch them. They would walk into their house. So many people at this time, they weren't answering their front door. They would hide in their beds because they would hear a knock and they would think it's death coming to get them. That's where we get this idea of the dun, 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 death knocking on the door to come in. And so here you see a depiction of this. Now, why this is fascinating, the scene reminds me of, if you've ever seen the Jim Henson movie Labyrinth with David Bowie. And there's that, it was, what was her, Jennifer, what was her name? The teenage girl, and she just recently played with Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick. But she's in her room in that scene when all the Muppets pop up out of the drawers and stuff. They're like these like fairy demon Muppets. It's really creepy. It's like the same scene because all these demon creatures are popping up. And interestingly enough, the man that's dying in bed, you get this since he's dying, and he has his guardian angel right there next to him. The guardian angel is trying to get him to repent. And he's actually having him look up at the cross. He's not looking at the cross. He's only looking at the Grim Reaper coming through the door. And then you have these little demons pulling up this gold, and they're trying to bribe him with gold. So you get, it's kind of a sad picture. You get the feeling that even at the last moment he could repent, and he's choosing not to repent. He's choosing not to turn to Messiah, and he's going to go to a sad fate. Now, this, I'm just showing you this because I have actually used this in a lot of my work. It was so exciting to see the actual Melchizedek painting that I have used in real person. And, it was the size of a dinner plate. It was really small. And for all you Paul fans out there, why is it that Paul always has a migraine? I rarely see paintings of Paul where he doesn't look like, he's just like, the guy had chronic headaches, I'm telling you. Great depiction of St. George and the dragon, broken up, but medieval. Look, I think it was wood, I think. And I want to, okay, before I get to that, here, of course, is Mary Magdalene, the sacred flame. The flame, of course, is divine. And it's interesting that she's looking into a mirror there. And now I've seen a couple different depictions of this sacred flame with Mary Magdalene. But of course, you guys know that mirrors are divine. And mirrors are supposed to show us the reflection of God, that we are the image of the Creator. But the problem with narcissism is that, a narcissist will not see beyond the reflection. They will only focus on the reflection. So the point of a mirror is that you're supposed to penetrate, go into it, go into the reflection, into the deeper self. Another great depiction of a medieval saint in kind of angelic attire with a breastplate and everything. We don't have this guy identified. Okay, so this here is going to be really hard to see, but this is St. George fighting the dragon. I was really excited to see this. Now, speaking of dinosaurs, earlier tonight, I want you to really look at this, because this dragon here, a lot of the depictions of the dragons in the Middle Ages, they were very small. They're not like, the Disney things or whatever we see today, where they're these massive, huge dragons. They were smaller than people, very small, and it makes a lot of sense. So let's assume St. George here is, what, 5'7", maybe he's 5'11", I don't know. This serpent would be about that size, 5'5", 6 foot, not real large. It would be like the alligators in my backyard. And these dragons are very serpentine-like. Look how its tail is curled around like a pig's tail. It's like a snake, right? Like if you can imagine a snake wrapping its tail around a log, and its neck, it does the same thing. It kind of curls around, and it could be very flexible. Like, so if you were to grab it by the tail, it could whip around and it could bite you, right? So what they started doing with dinosaurs is that it wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s with Jurassic Park where they balanced them out, and they had the tail go straight out and they had the neck go straight out. And so it was like a balancing act, right? They made them look more like birds and not like serpentine creatures. In 2018, I believe it was, there was actually in India, they were digging out, refurbishing a subway system. It was abandoned, and the guy goes down there and he pulls up a mummified dinosaur. Now, I hope you all understand what I'm saying by dinosaur, right? I'm talking about dragons. And he pulled up this mummified dinosaur, which was on video. You can go still see it. And I saw this when it hit the news. And I said, if this is legitimate, it's going to be buried within a week. You're not going to hear from this again. And of course, we haven't. It's been buried, right? They don't want this out in the open. But there were paleontologists who saw this, and they immediately identified. They're like, yeah, we know what kind of dinosaur that is. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be mummified. That makes no sense. It must be a hoax. Well, the interesting thing about this is that it was it looked like a serpentine creature. Like it was almost like in the Asian dragons or the Chinese ones, where the back goes up and down. It looked like that. It looked like if you could take a snake and make it into a dinosaur, that's what it looked like. It would wrap around like that. So what I'm saying is that I don't believe that all dinosaurs are hoax. I believe that the image that they show us is fake. I think that they looked and would have acted very differently. All right, moving on. Kind of interesting to see a siren in the water there with an angel. Why am I showing you this one? I don't know why I'm showing you that one. I was excited to see an actual lady in a unicorn medieval painting. That was pretty cool to see. So now we're looking at these angels. I think this is an angel, and there's a lot of wood carvings they were finding from the Middle Ages of these angels. Very beautiful. And you get this sense in a lot of the artwork and stuff that they were actually mixing with men, that they were kind of, people saw them. We have artwork that depicts that. It's very odd. This here is, I believe, an actual depiction of Messiah with his queen. All right. When we talk about the Queen of Heaven, this is not his mother. This is his betrothed. And why do I say that? Well, one of the things is with Mary the Virgin, she's depicted with dark hair. Mary Magdalene is often depicted with red hair or blonde hair. I guess scrolling back up to this picture, there she is right there with red hair, right? It's Mary the mother. She has dark hair. And so here we have a depiction of him crowning his queen, and they're sitting side by side. That does not look like the Virgin Mary to me. And, I'm building more and more evidence. I want to build a case on this, that the whole idea of Mary the mother, the cult, what they call the cult of the Virgin Mary, when that took off with the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, they were actually burying Mary Magdalene. That in the Middle Ages, even if you go by official history, all right, so let's just gut out the Millennial Kingdom at this point, and let's just go with official history. You can show that in official history, Notre Dame and a lot of these cathedrals that were being built up, they were all recognizing the Queen of Heaven, which was Mary Magdalene. For the French and those, she was the queen. She was the betrothed, the wife of Messiah. I believe actually that's why we have the two pillars. In most of these cathedrals, they're representative of the masculine, the female, the feminine, Messiah, Mary Magdalene. And that is a conspiracy that it was buried by the Roman Catholic Church, and you can see the residue of it. Now they just go, oh, well, that's the mother, right? Every single time you have this, no, that doesn't look like the mother at all. It looks like his wife. Here's more beautiful depictions of angels playing tambourines, things like that. I think, is this another angel? This might be another angel. And this was wood. It's so beautiful. I love this stuff. And I think that ends that my photos. I wish I took hundreds and hundreds of them. I just showed you a select few. All right, before I close the night, let me see if there are any other questions coming out here. All right, let me look through these questions. If I miss you guys' questions, I do apologize. It's hard for me to talk and also looks good. All right, well, I want to do these more often. As I was saying, I brought Jennifer Hartz on today, and so you guys all know Polly Hart. So Polly Hart is without a Z, and he's married to a Jennifer Hart. This is not his wife, Jennifer Hart with a Z at the end. She's the one that's hitting up shelves of Shalom, the publishing imprint, and I'm really excited about that. And I want to kickstart it with having my own novel. Personally, I think that this is the best thing I've ever written. I think it is really good. And if you guys, for those of you who remember Rob Skiba, before he died, he really wanted to, he was really gearing up to work on his Seed project, which was a fictional narrative that he was putting like Nephilim truth and stuff like that in there. And so you can think of this as the same thing. It's I'll have more details about it and tell you guys, but I think it's pretty radical. I love it. Looking forward to it. And so I'm going to be doing a lot more I have a lot of presentations still to give, and I want to do a lot more of these Q&A Kingdom Verse, have people call in. I didn't have as many people call in this week as I had last week. So in the future, please come into the Discord group, raise your hand, come up, talk about whatever you want. I'll listen to you. I'll answer your questions if you do ask questions. But the thing is that there is so much research out there. I can't cover it all. And so many of you, or I should say every one of you, have pieces of the puzzle. You have something to offer to you bring forward and go, okay, I don't know what this is. This is really awesome. How does this fit in? And we could all look at it and go, wow, maybe this, creates a better picture, or maybe not. We don't really know. Anyways, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight. Subscribe if you haven't. Please like this video if you haven't done so already. It helps. Leave a comment below. And if y'all put something on your heart, well, there it is right there. Support the Unexpected Cosmology's mission. I will remind you that we are a widow's ministry. We, if TUC falls and I have to go get a job somewhere else, it's not just the TUC itself that would just sit there empty. It's now we have Pamela who's translating the Bible, right? She's not going to get those finances. And she gets it. She gets it in book sales too, guys. You guys go and support her. You buy Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, Genesis, Exodus, Song of Songs, Psalms, so on and so forth. That all that supports her. And of course, we're supporting Rebecca as well. So if that's on your heart, something to think about. All right, love you guys. I'll be on again in a couple nights. We'll be going through giants, talking about the 1800s newspaper clippings and how the Smithsonian started coming in. See you then.